2025. And speaking of 2025, we have the first big question to answer that's really going to determine not just this year, but the next several seasons, the end of Dak Prescott's career most likely in Dallas, because he'll be here for the next couple seasons. What is going to happen in this coaching search, right? And so we know Mike McCarthy, for those that don't know, after the season ended on Sunday, they have 2 weeks to find someone else or re-sign him, or else he becomes a free agent. His contract expires on January 14th. And so the way that I'm looking at this is that I'm looking on Twitter, X, whatever you wish to call it, to just as we're going through the show to see any updates. And from what I understand, we'll have a decision by the end of the week, but the Cowboys are not rushing this. And they're putting themselves at a disadvantage. And the reason I believe that, and we'll get into the whole McCarthy talk, but the reason I think they're putting themselves at a disadvantage is because once your season's over, you have other teams that are firing their head coaches, getting ready to get into that whole swing of things. And the Cowboys are going to sit back, and they're just going to wait. Now, again, they can wait all they want because as we saw when Jason Garrett left, they waited longer. I think it was like a week and a couple days. And they let his contract expire. In fact, actually, if you look at the timeline, Jason, if I remember correctly, Jason Garrett said, yeah, you guys can go interview other coaches. That's fine. And then that's when they interviewed Marvin Lewis, Mike McCarthy. That was it. They knew they were going to get Mike McCarthy because that's who they wanted. They didn't go after any other coach. They just settled. And I'm thinking that's going to happen here as well, once again. So I wanted to get like your preliminary thoughts on this whole Mike McCarthy coaching search thing, like them waiting. There's no reason to wait, honestly. But I wanted to get your initial thoughts on this whole thing.
Yeah, well, I do think, here's the thing. I believe that a decision about Mike McCarthy is going to be made sooner rather than later, just because I think that Mike McCarthy is going to facilitate that. He's going to request that. I do think that the Joneses respect Mike McCarthy. I think that they have a greater level of respect for Mike McCarthy's coaching acumen than they did for Jason Garrett. They knew that Jason Garrett wasn't a guy that was really looked at as a potential head coaching candidate after Dallas. Mike McCarthy is a much better candidate than Jason Garrett was at the end of his contract with the Dallas Cowboys. So because of that, and because I think Mike McCarthy is going to request, if you're going to make a decision, please make it within the next few days so that I can go and interview with other jobs, because I don't believe that Mike McCarthy is the guy that's going to wait until January 14th. I just don't see that happening. And if they do that and they wait till January 14th for Mike McCarthy to re-sign with this team, I will lose every ounce of faith that I have in this football team, because that is not a leader. I mean, how is that going to go over with the players where you're so desperate to keep this job with this team that you're waiting until they make the decision to say, yeah, you can come back. If I'm Mike McCarthy, me personally speaking, I would gain a lot of respect for Mike McCarthy if he said, you want to know what? If you're going to make a decision now. And if they make that decision to keep Mike McCarthy, I'll gain a lot of respect for him, meaning like within the next few days. I'll gain a lot of respect for him because I at least look at that and say, hey, this guy has balls. This guy's going into that front office and saying, make a decision. I'm here or I'm gone. And if they say, you're here, you want to know what? I'll say, I would disagree with the decision to bring him back, but I can get behind that because he's taking the initiative and saying, you're not going to ruin potential opportunities that I'm going to have. You're going to make sure that I have the time to go out there and interview with other teams so that I can potentially be a head coach next year.
For sure. And so I did want to talk about his resume here in Dallas. There was a couple of notable things that we got to look at the positives and the negatives, of course. So this is Mike McCarthy's resume with the Dallas Cowboys. He went 49-35 over these 5 years. This is the third most wins. By the way, the 49 wins is the third most in Cowboys history, behind Jason Garrett and Tom Landry. He had 3 12-win seasons that he coached and 2 10-loss seasons he coached. In this span of time as well, 2 NFC East titles, and the only playoff victory that you had was the wild card berth against the Tampa Bay Bucks. You had no NFC title appearances and no Super Bowl appearances. And you might be asking, well, how did the Cowboys compare to the rest of the NFL? Since 2020, the Cowboys have tied the Vikings for the 8th most wins in all of football with 49, behind teams like the Steelers with like 1 game, the Buccaneers with 1 game, the Eagles by 2, Ravens by 4, and the Packers by 4. Of course, you got the Bills and the Chiefs at 1, 2, most and second most. But the other thing that was alarming for me was the penalty situation. The Dallas Cowboys ranked, just to keep things in focus, because a lot of people talk about the Cowboys being undisciplined. The Cowboys were 25th in 2020. Okay, injury riddle, whatever the case may be. 25th in 2020. 2021, they were the 32nd team, like the worst team when it came to penalties. Then on top of that, you then had McCarthy come out and be like, we're going to clean this stuff up and all this other crap. 2022, they were 23rd in penalties. 2023, they were 30th. And then this year, they were 28th. They never got any better. I mean, then again, when you go from 32nd to 23rd, that's improvement. But that's not saying much. But
no,
there's that. And I think looking at those points, do I think Mike McCarthy is a terrible coach? I don't think he's terrible. The problem, I've always looked at it this way. When we hired Mike McCarthy, and we talked about it, we talked about what he was brought in here to do. He was not, he was brought in here to raise the floor a bit, to get us to the postseason a bit more often. But, dude, you hired him because he'd been to the conference title game 4 times with Green Bay. He won a championship with Green Bay. And the idea was, if we get a guy like Mike McCarthy, rather than what we had in Jason Garrett, we're getting an experienced guy that's been deep into the postseason with his teams, and he's going to lead us there. And again, to me, winning the championship is one thing, and I'm not a fan of retread coaches. Anybody that knows me knows I'm not. But the thing is that our whole goal with Mike McCarthy was getting to the title game. We had 3 shots, and what's funny is that 2 of the 3 times you lost to the team that went to the title game. That was the 49ers in 2021 and in 2022. 2023, you did lose to Green Bay in embarrassing fashion, and they almost went to the title game. And the thing is that the thing that bugs me as I'm going on this little soliloquy here with Mike McCarthy is after every single damn playoff game we lost, it was always something. Oh, we were nervous. We were tired. We weren't prepared. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. Bro, stop it. You're making yourself look bad. But number 2, even when you could blame the players in those instances, I don't give a damn. That goes on you, because you as a coach are responsible for preparing these dudes. And the fact of the matter being that you couldn't do certain things, and we talked about it, like you've had 2 play callers, and what makes it more egregious, especially over the last 2 seasons, is you're the play caller. You let Kellen Moore go because you felt like I didn't like what he was doing. You've had now 3 defensive coordinators, and one of them became a head coach out in Washington. We know Dan Quinn. And the thing that bugs me the most is that during that 3-year run, they didn't do anything fundamentally better, dude. We've kept talking about how situational football was a problem. They wouldn't run the football, or not that they wouldn't, they couldn't run the football. And then defensively, they couldn't stop the run. That's been the story of this Mike McCarthy era, but I'll stop because I could go on. But tell me, man, like, tell me about this Mike McCarthy tenure. Like, what do you think his I went over with the resume. How do you think that pans out? Like, what do you feel about him?
Well, here's the thing. If we're going to get a retread coach, I got an idea.
Watching Jared Goff go 18 for 18, 292 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Got me feeling icy.
I couldn't do that pregame warm-up.
One more.
Like Pat Mahomes going 5 for 5 in overtime.
Got me feeling icy.
Don't lose the toss to Mahomes or you're dead.
See, here's the thing, man. And I'll let you go to, like, if you're going to suck or you're not going to do good, at least entertain me, you know? At least as a fan, entertain me. And I think Chucky would entertain me as a coach.
Got me feeling nicey.
Nicey. But tell me, man.
Doesn't that fire you up, though? Like, that to me, like, if I'm a player and I got a coach with that energy, that fires me up. If we're going to lose, I want to lose because we're just not talented enough to win. That, to me, if you lose because you're not talented enough, I can live with that. I cannot live with a team that you look at and say, you're clearly talented enough, but after the game, you're talking about preparation, being tired, all this other stuff. I can't live with that. I cannot live with that. And that's one thing, you know, when we talk about Mike McCarthy, he just did not get his guys ready to play in the biggest of games. I mean, you saw this, even you go on the road against the Bills, get smacked. You go on the road against the San Francisco 49ers, you get smacked. You know, it's just these big games. Mike McCarthy wasn't the difference maker in these big games. And that's a big time problem for me. And that's why ultimately, I do think that they're probably going to move on. It just seems like that's, you know, what's going to happen here. And honestly, it's deserved. I get the whole argument behind, like, you don't know if you're going to find somebody better. Okay. Well, I'd be willing to try, because here's the thing. You don't know if you might find find somebody better, but you might find somebody better. And that might, to me, is ultimately the thing driving it. Because, hey, look, if they hire a coach and they go 5-12, okay, great. If we keep McCarthy and we go 10-7, but we lose in the wild card round, what's the difference? Cool, you got to the wild card round? Okay. But that's not what we're in this for. We're in this to try and win a Super Bowl. And I think we've seen the ceiling here when it comes to Mike McCarthy. He's had 5 years and he's won 1 playoff game against an 8-9 football team in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Not good enough. Not good enough, which is why they have to move on. And, you know, like, hey, shout out to Shango. He was saying this. This happened in Green Bay. So when people say Dak Prescott is not good enough to get you over the hump, I would say this. Under Mike McCarthy, prime Aaron Rodgers wasn't good enough to consistently get them over the hump. He underachieved. And hey, look, Tony Dungy will tell you firsthand that those teams that he had with Indianapolis, he'll sit there and tell you, yeah, we won a Super Bowl, but we underachieved. Same thing there with Green Bay. You had the greatest quarterback that I've ever seen. Prime Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback, nobody was touching that guy. But the thing is, right, they were still losing in the wild card round and the divisional round. If I'm not mistaken, didn't they go like 14-2 one year or 15-1?
They went 15-1 when Aaron Rodgers had arguably the best quarterback season in 2011, and they lost to the Giants in 2011. And they went on to win the Super Bowl, by the way.
Hey, look, that's great. Like, they went on to win the Super Bowl, still got to win that game. And that's the thing. A difference-making head coach wins that game. He's not a difference maker. And which is why, like, hey, I hear rumors about the Saints being interested and the Bears. I think that that'd be a good hire for them because Mike McCarthy does serve a purpose. He can build a culture.